Amy Allwine and her husband Stephen lived in Minnesota. They had a 9-year-old son named Joseph. Amy worked as a dog trainer and Stephen was an IT specialist. They were very religious. The two of them met at a religious college. Both of them belonged to the United Church of God. The church had very strict rules that its members had to adhere to. On the 31st of May 2016, there was a knock at the door. Amy and Stephen was very surprised to see 2 FBI agents on their doorstep. The FBI agents informed them that they have been looking into a group called Besa Mafia on the dark web. Besa Mafia basically provided a service on the dark web where if you wanted someone killed, you could contact them, like hitmen. Besa Mafia had ties to the Albanian Mafia. The FBI agents then told Amy and Stephen that someone had tried to hire a hitman to kill Amy. A user by the name of Dog Day God contacted Besa Mafia and paid them $12,000 in bitcoins to kill Amy. Dog Day God also provided information that Amy will be away in March for a dog show and that they should do it then. Besa Mafia agreed and said they'll do it. There was lots of correspondence between the two, setting up different dates and ways of doing it, but it never materialized. Unbeknownst to Dog Day God, Besa Mafia was a fake group, just taking money and not actually planning to kill anyone. Amy couldn't believe what the FBI agents just told her. She was a well-liked person in the community, with no enemies as far as she knew. Amy was then asked to make a list of all her closest friends and family who would have known when she left for the dog show. Amy and Stephen put up lots of security cameras around their house, and they had a police patrol the area to make sure they are safe. Then, on the 24th of July, almost a month after Amy learned about Dog Day God, she received a worrying email. I'll just quickly summarize the email. The person who sent it told Amy that she should end her own life, and if she doesn't, then he or she will start killing off Amy's friends and family members. The person gave details about Amy's family that only someone really close to her would have been able to have known. Amy took the email very serious, but because of her religious faith, there was no way she would end her own life, as that would mean she would go to hell. The email was also sent from the dark web, and it couldn't be traced. On November 13th, 2016, the police received a 911 call from Stephen Allwine. He says, "I think my wife just shot herself. There's blood all over." The police hurry over, but it was too late. Amy had passed away. There was a few strange things about the crime scene, however. The gun was in her left hand, even though she was right-handed. There was still food cooking in the oven. Why would she make dinner and then decide to end her life all of a sudden? The bullet went through the right ear, which would have been near impossible to do with your left hand. The blood splatter was also something they found strange. It looked as if her body was moved. When the police used luminol, they found that her blood was almost everywhere in the house. Surprisingly, also in Joseph's room. It was obvious that Amy did not end her own life, but that someone else shot her. What I found extremely sad, that it was 9-year-old Joseph who found his mom and then called his dad. There was only one real suspect, Dog Day God, who contacted Besa Mafia and emailed Amy. The problem was that I couldn't really track anything on a dark web and find out who it is. The police did however notice that Amy's husband Stephen wasn't mourning at all. This of course doesn't mean that he is guilty. Everyone grieves in their own way, but it was enough for police to question him. They checked in Stephen's basement where he was working and they find 66 electrical devices. He is an IT specialist, but I still think 66 is a lot. They took some of his devices for the investigation. They learned that Stephen was actually cheating on Amy. This could have been a possible motive. He was cheating on Amy with a couple of women and it was clear that he no longer wanted to be married to Amy. But remember, due to his faith, divorce was not an option. The police also learned from his devices that Stephen was very familiar with the dark web. They found that Stephen had a lot of searches for scopolamine, a drug that basically renders your body helpless. Stephen looked all over on a dark web for this drug. Amy's autopsy revealed that she had lots of scopolamine in her system. It can't be proven that Stephen was the one that gave it to her, but a pretty big coincidence nevertheless. The name that Stephen was using on his forums looking for the drug was, you guessed it, Dog Day God. Using iCloud, the police was able to see that the Bitcoin code Dog Day God used was on Stephen's phone. It was now undeniable that Stephen was the one who ended his wife's life. He knew divorce was not an option. I'm not sure how his faith works, but I'm pretty sure that if it's wrong to divorce, then it must be wrong to kill your wife too. His trial started in January 2018. It lasted only 8 days, and he was found guilty. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. I find it really awful that Stephen actually let his 9-year-old son Joseph find his mother that way. I mean, it will be something that he's going to have to live with for the rest of his life. 49-year-old Sara Lynn Wineski was living in St. Petersburg, Florida in 2005. She had recently moved from Sarasota. Sara had 4 children and 4 grandchildren, but had no contact with them at the time. Things weren't good for her, and she became homeless. On the 22nd of May 2005, a St. Petersburg woman called police at 11 p.m. because she heard a woman screaming. The next day, a woman's body was found underneath the deck of a McDonald's. It was the body of Sara Lynn Wineski, and her family was informed. DNA samples were taken at the time, but the technology simply wasn't there to match it to someone. In 2013, they were finally able to match it to someone, 31-year-old Raymond Samuels. Raymond was already serving a prison sentence in Ohio since 2006 for attempted murder and kidnapping. His DNA was not only on the crime scene, but also on the belt that was used to strangle Sara. Sara's daughter, Candace Cheeseman, had this to say: "She was not living a life to be proud of at the time of her death. As a family, we are not in denial about where she was in life, but it is important to us that people know that her life was not a waste and not something anyone had the right to take from her. She was not always homeless and alone. We have wonderful memories of her, and her murderer stole the hope that we all carried in our hearts that we would have the chance to make more memories with her someday." Rayna Rison was born on May 6, 1976 in Indiana. Her parents were Ben and Karen Rison. She had an older sister, Lori, and a younger sister, Wendy. In 1993, 16-year-old Rayna was a sophomore. She did really well in school and received good grades. She also worked 3 jobs, one of them being a job at a local animal hospital where she cleaned kennels and walked dogs. Her dream was to become a veterinarian. On March 26, 1993, Rayna and her boyfriend, Matt Alser, had a date planned. The couple broke up a few months earlier, but they were trying again. Matt went to the animal hospital at 6 p.m. to pick Rayna up. He noticed that all of the lights in the building were off, and it seemed empty. He drove past a couple of times, but no signs of Rayna. Matt soon became worried and drove to Rayna's house. Rayna's father, Ben, opened the door. Matt asked Ben if Rayna was home, but Ben informed him that she wasn't. Rayna's parents, her younger sister Wendy, and Matt all waited in the house for Rayna to come home. By 10:30 p.m., Rayna still didn't arrive home, and they went to the local police station to report her missing. They were told but they had to wait 24 hours before they would be able to file a missing persons report. Ben gave him a photo of Rayna and asked them to be on the lookout either way, since it was so unlike Rayna. The next morning, there was still no sign of her, and the family decided they could not wait any longer. Wendy started to call lots of people, asking if they didn't perhaps see Rayna or know what has happened to her. She called Rayna's older sister Lori and Lori's husband, Ray. The two of them both stated, however, that they haven't heard from Rayna at all. The family also began searching around and put up lots of missing persons flyers. The police heard about this and started their own investigation. They made a public appeal asking for any information that leads to Rayna's whereabouts. Immediately, this resulted in the police's first lead. Several witnesses came forward claiming they saw Rayna talking with two men outside the animal hospital. It looked as if Rayna was arguing with one of the men. Some of the people described the argument as a fight between two lovers. Because of this, police decided to question Rayna's boyfriend, Matt Alser. Matt told them how he went to pick her up, but she wasn't there, and he then waited with her family for her to return. The next evening, Rayna's car was found. It was located about 9 miles from the animal hospital. The hood of the car was up. This initially made police believe that her car broke down. One of the police officers got inside and the car started with no problems. They soon realized that the car was staged to look like it broke down. The police also found Rayna's purse in the car. Why would Rayna just leave it behind? In the glove box, they found a man's ring inside it. Believing it was Matt's ring, they questioned him again the next day. Matt told them it wasn't his ring, but he might know whose it is. He told them about Rayna's ex-boyfriend, Jason Tibbs. Matt also said that he believes Jason still wanted Rayna. With this new information, the detectives went to question Jason Tibbs. He told them how he and Rayna dated in the 7th grade for 6 months before breaking up. Jason also admitted that the ring was his, but had a reason for it to be in the car. He claimed that he was doing some work on her car. While he was working, the ring started to bother him, so he put it in the glove box and forgot to take it out again. The detectives also asked him where he was on the night that Rayna disappeared, and he had an alibi. He told them he was playing a game called fox hunting with his friends. I'll quickly try to explain what fox hunting is, for those of you who don't know. It is basically a hide and seek, but with people in their cars. A couple of people would be seeking, and others would be hiding. Those who were hiding had to give clues to their location using the radio. Then the seekers had to find them using the leads. Jason's friends confirmed that he was playing with them, but no one actually saw him personally. A couple of days after this, a Letterman jacket was found 7 miles or so from where Rayna's car was found. The jacket belonged to Matt Alser, but he had given it to Rayna to wear, to signify that the two of them were together. On April 26, 1993, exactly 1 month after Rayna disappeared, a man was fishing with his teenage daughter. She got bored and started walking around when she made a startling discovery. The girl quickly called her dad over. In front of them in the water was a fully clothed body with 2 logs across the back. When detectives arrived, they believed it was Rayna due to the clothes she was last seen wearing. Their suspicions was later confirmed. It was Rayna Rison. This was no longer just a missing person case. An autopsy was done and the cause of death was asphyxiation. She had no cuts or bruises. The detectives decided to speak with Jason Tibbs again. This time he told police that Rayna told him something when they were dating. He told them and they had to look into Ray McCarty, the husband of Rayna's older sister Lori. They then learned why they had to look into Ray. When Rayna was 11 years old, Ray started molesting her, and 2 years later he impregnated her. Rayna had to get an abortion, and Ray received a 3-year suspended sentence in 1991. It ended on January 5, 1993, just 2 months before Rayna had first gone missing. The detectives went to Lori and Ray's house. Both of them said that they did not see Rayna on the night she disappeared. Ray stated that he was busy shooting pigeons on a friend's farm that night. The detectives called a friend, and he confirmed that Ray was indeed with him that night, but didn't want to say anything else. This was not good enough for the detectives, and they went back to Ray. This time, he told them what had really happened. He told detectives that on that day around 5:40 p.m., he was looking for a house just around the block from the animal hospital. He then saw Rayna's car and went to talk with her. They had a brief conversation and Ray left. After that, he picked up a hitchhiker and took her where she needed to go. Ray also claims that the hitchhiker was why he originally lied in front of his wife. She did not fully trust him after what he did to her sister. Ray was the main suspect at this point, but there was no physical evidence connecting him to the crime, and the case went cold. It would stay that way for a year and a half. Indiana police pulled over a van driven by Larry Hall and arrested him for attempted kidnapping. In his van, he had newspaper clippings of Rayna and a prescription bottle with the name R. Rison on it. Larry claimed he was the one who abducted and killed Rayna. However, police discovered he was in Kentucky when she vanished, and the prescription bottle was fake. Larry Hall was ruled out as a suspect in Rayna's case. In 1998, now 5 years later, the detectives didn't know what else to do and looked at the 3 suspects again. Rayna's boyfriend, Matt Elser, her ex-boyfriend Jason Tibbs, and her older sister's husband, Ray McCarty. Matt's alibi was solid, and he never was a serious suspect. Jason's story of fox hunting wasn't that solid, because no one actually saw him. Ray's alibi of shooting pigeons was proven to be false, so they looked into Ray again. They got a search warrant to search his property. Inside his house they found 2 handguns and a stun gun. Inside his car was blood. This is what they were looking for. They arrested him in May 1998. The new prosecutor felt, however, that there was not enough evidence linking him to the crime, and they were forced to let him go in 1999. For the next 9 years, the case would once again be classified as a cold case, unfortunately. Then in 2008, police got a lead that would blow this case wide open. Ricky Hammonds, who was 14 years old in 1993 when Rayna was murdered, contacted the police saying he knew who was responsible. This is everything he had to say. Back in 1993, he was in the roof of his parents' house, smoking marijuana. He heard a car drive into the barn. Ricky saw his sister's boyfriend, Eric Fieldman, and Jason Tibbs. When they opened the trunk, he saw a body covered by a blanket. He didn't realize it was Rayna, but he later did when he heard about her on the news one day. Ricky was scared to come forward back in 1993 because he would get into trouble for smoking marijuana. The police then interviewed Eric Fieldman and told him he will face no consequences if he can tell them exactly what happened. He accepted the deal and told them what had happened. Eric and Jason went to the animal hospital on the 26th of March 1993. Jason wanted to get Rayna to leave Matt and take him back. When she exited the door of the animal hospital, he called her over. She clearly didn't want to talk with him. Before she could scream, he pushed her into the car and Eric sped off. A couple of minutes later, Eric stopped the car and Rayna tried to run away. Jason followed her and said, "If I can't have you, no one can." He then strangled her until she stopped breathing. Afterwards, the two of them threw her body in the trunk and drove to the barn. That is where Ricky saw what happened. They then disposed of her and drove her car 9 miles away from the animal hospital and made it look like a breakdown. In August 2013, police arrested Jason Tibbs. He had a wife and kids by this time. He was arraigned by August 23, 2013. In December 2014, Jason was sentenced to 40 years in prison. Jason still claims that he is innocent and he's sure that Ray was actually guilty. Sherri Rasmussen and John Rutten married in November 1985. They moved into a condo in Van Nuys, California. Sherri was 27 years old. She was incredibly intelligent and entered college at 16. Sherri was working as the director of nursing at Glendale Medical Center. John Rutten was 25 years old. He worked as a hard drive engineer and had a mechanical engineering degree from UCLA. Their marriage was a happy one, but there was only one problem. John's ex-girlfriend, Stephanie Lazarus, wouldn't leave him alone. Stephanie and John briefly dated while in UCLA. Stephanie thought the two of them would get married, while John thought they were just fooling around. Stephanie became a LAPD officer. Even after Sherri and John got married, Stephanie would still frequently visit them at their condo and try and make Sherri feel uncomfortable. On the morning of February 24, 1986, John Rutten left their condo to go to work. Sherri didn't feel like going to work that day because she had to give a lecture, so she was still in bed when John left. When John arrived at his work, he called Sherri to hear if she decided to go to work or not. There was no answer, and he assumed she had went back to sleep. Later in the morning, he called again and still no answer. He then called at her workplace, but no one has seen her. That evening, John returns home and he immediately sensed something is wrong. He saw that the garage door was open and the BMW he bought for Sherri was missing. He goes inside and finds his wife's body on the living room floor. She was shot 3 times. It seemed like there was a massive fight in the house, and Sherri also had a wound on her face, likely inflicted by a muzzle of a gun. On Sherri's arm there was a bite mark, which at least meant that I had DNA of a suspect. Immediately the detectives concluded that it was a burglar who was surprised by Sherri being home. There was a problem with his theory. The only thing taken was a BMW, and that was found 1 week later. If it was a robbery, why wouldn't the thieves actually take something? When Sherri's parents, Nels and Loretta, found out, they called the lead detective, Lyle Meyer. Nels told the detective that Sherri felt threatened by Stephanie Lazarus and that she should be looked into. Lyle Meyer made a note of it, but Stephanie Lazarus was never looked into at all. Due to the LAPD pretty much viewing this case as being solved, there was not much being done in the next couple of years. In 1993, when there was a new detective assigned to the case, Nels would try again to convince him that it wasn't just a botched robbery. Nels asked for the DNA to be tested and said he would pay for it, but the new detective refused. In 2004, there wasn't that many unsolved cases left in Van Nuys where Sherri lived, so cases like hers were looked at again. The DNA sample received from the bite mark on Sherri's arm was finally tested. They didn't find any matches, but they did notice that the DNA was female. Only in 2009 was this case looked at again. Jim Nuttall and Pete Barba was now assigned to the case. They saw that the DNA was female and made a list of all the possible women that had problems with Sherri. The only real name on their list was Stephanie Lazarus. By this time she now had a very high rank inside the LAPD. They followed her for a couple of weeks. Finally, one day, they were able to retrieve some of her DNA from a cup that she had been drinking from. It was sent in for testing and it matched the DNA found on a bite mark on Sherri's arm perfectly. They then interviewed Stephanie. She was trying to be smart, but she did let little bits of information slip. When she left, there were 2 police officers outside who arrested her. The trial began in 2012 and more information came out. The gun that was used was .38 caliber and is the same gun that Stephanie had at the time. Stephanie also didn't come into work that day. In March 2012, 52-year-old Stephanie Lazarus was convicted of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to 27 years in prison. She will be eligible for parole in 2034.